We begin this hour with the resurgence of President Trump's $1.776 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund that they've previously claimed was dead. The fund, designed to benefit Trump's allies and possibly include compensation for January 6th rioters, was previously scrapped after fierce bipartisan backlash just last month. But yesterday, the Trump administration declined to submit a court-requested sworn declaration to a federal judge, noting that the program is officially dead. Instead, they said the court should just rely on this prior congressional testimony from Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche.
We know that the department has agreed to pause this effort until at least June 12th. I wanted to ask what your plans were for the fund after June 12th.
So thank you. So look, we're not moving forward with the fund. You're right that there's a date that in the case in the Eastern District of Virginia in June, but we are not moving forward with the fund, period.
Instead of solidifying that claim in writing, the DOJ wrote in a notice to the court, quote, "Such declarations are unnecessary and the compelled testimony of senior officials from the executive branch implicates serious separation of powers concerns," which all of a sudden they have. As our colleagues Fallon Gallagher and Lisa Rubin note, the refusal by Blanche and the DOJ to put a pledge in writing not to create the fund is likely to spark political backlash, especially on Capitol Hill, where Blanche's permanent nomination to head the department is pending. Joining us now is Liz Oyer, former DOJ pardon attorney and federal public defender, and Eddie Glaude, Jr., a distinguished professor at Princeton University, MS Now analyst, and author of the new book, America, USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Adversaries. There we go. Which we will talk about in a moment. We want people to know we read around here. Liz?
Yes.
I am confused. I was under the impression, as a non-lawyer, that when the court tells you to do something, you do it. If you do not do it, there are ramifications, legal ramifications for whoever is not doing the thing that the court told them to do. The DOJ is saying, take our word for it. We said it. I would never write it down because it would make Donald Trump's feelings hurt, I guess. What is going on here?
What's going on here, Eugene, is Todd Blanche's DOJ just said, you can't make me to a federal judge.
Can they do that?
Well, the Constitution actually says that she can make them. There's this doctrine called judicial review, which has existed for over 200 years. The Supreme Court said in this case that every law student reads like their first day of law school, called Marbury versus Madison. That it is the job of the courts to decide whether actions of the executive, the president, are legal and whether actions of Congress are legal. That's the basic role of the courts in our democracy. And Todd Blanche's Justice Department is saying, actually, no, we want to do that job too. So that's a huge problem, and it puts us essentially on the brink again of a constitutional crisis, because this is a situation where the executive branch is refusing to acknowledge the authority of the courts. It's very similar to what we saw at the beginning of the administration when the former acting Attorney General Emil Bove apparently told DOJ lawyers, we might need to say F you to the courts rather than comply with their orders that prohibit us from deporting people.
So then,
now Judge Emil Bove.
Yes. Now let me stick with you, Liz, because consequences. What are the consequences, if not as for Todd Blanche, if not in his official government role? Does he expose himself once he's out, like his law license? I mean, to me, to Eugene's point, it's astounding to me that you have the acting attorney general saying to the court, bump you, we don't care what you have to say. And I don't see, what's the judge going to do? Because we have not seen a judge really push back hard, show oh, you're not going to follow my ruling?
Contempt.
Contempt, send the cops out, get them arrested. I don't know. I'm not the lawyer, so tell me.
The immediate remedy would be for the judge to hold these lawyers in contempt. And that's something that a few judges have started to do. We've seen in immigration cases over 200 instances in which the Justice Department has defied court orders. And in a couple of those cases, courts actually have held DOJ lawyers in contempt. So that could happen here. But you're right that we also need to be thinking about accountability accountability further down the road. And one thing that a lot of people in the legal community are looking at is Todd Blanche's law license, along with the law licenses of other lawyers who are advocating for these positions that are not soundly based in law. These are people who ought to have serious looks taken at whether they should be licensed to practice law. And I expect that there will be many bar complaints filed against Todd Blanche and others in the Justice Department. We've already seen at least a few. So that would be the next step in legal accountability. But as far as this court's order, if the Justice Department has a problem with it, there is a process in place called an appeal to appeal the court's order to the next highest court. You don't just tell the court, I'm not going to do it. You have to comply with court orders, or you have to challenge them in a lawful manner. And it just illustrates how unfit Todd Blanche is for the position that he's trying to win of Attorney General, the fact that he's running the Department of Justice like this.
I'm not going to do it. It doesn't work. So all y'all watching, if y'all get in trouble with the court, do not tell the judge, do not take Todd Blanche's advice here. Do something different.
Not try this.
Well, I was actually surprised that they actually took down the Donald J. Trump from the Kennedy Center last week and abided by the court ruling, although we haven't seen it yet with our own eyes. But, Eddie, I want to stay on this topic of accountability and get your perspective as someone who is sort of outside of Washington and maybe a more creative, a more academic and creative thinker when it comes to what accountability might look like. I mean, have you had any conversations yet about a post-Trump administration accountability mechanisms?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we will make the President Ford move, decide we need to move on. I don't know if we're going to hold these folk accountable. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know who we're going to be on the other side of this madness, to be honest with you. What I'm interested in, though, is, I mean, here we have an example of the imperial presidency at work, right? He's not going to pay attention to the court's order. But for what? What's motivating it? So we have the combination of enactment of the imperial presidency on behalf of what? A slush fund? On behalf of what we see as this attempt to establish an anti-weaponization fund? It's not that. It's a slush fund aimed at doing what? So I'm trying to think about this in relationship to the corruption, the grift, and the overall bankruptcy of this particular administration. And so we have the broader question that we have to keep in view. And then we have this very specific aspect of the Trump era, and that is that we are awash in corruption. And this is just another example of it. And so what we do afterwards, how do we hold these people accountable? We have to admit what we're experiencing, it seems to me.
I think it's important to note, as always, when we talk about this slush fund, this anti-weaponization fund, whatever you want to call it, started because the president of the United States sued his own IRS for $10 billion. That is where this idea came from. So I'm just saying, we all have a lot of questions about what the purpose of the fund was for. That is where we started. What they want to do with it now is unclear. Liz, to try to tie a knot on what the legal ramifications could be here. You have a DOJ that's doing what it's doing. The courts are doing their own thing. You talk about a constitutional crisis. My understanding has always been a constitutional crisis, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, only happens when there's nothing in the Constitution, right, that says this thing can happen, right? We get to a point where one of the three branches of government is doing something so out of bounds that the founders did not put any kind of roadmap, blueprint in the Constitution. Then what? We hit a constitutional crisis in this moment, possibly, and then what?
Well, I think that the issue is really when different components of our government refuse to respect the limits that are placed on their power.
Donald Trump said there's no limits to his power. That's what he told Marco Rubio.
That's exactly right. And really the only thing that we can do is assert our power as citizens to try to vote these people out of office and take back the power that we have given to them. One thing that I think we forget is that these people who are running our government only have power because we gave it to them. We had the power to give them these positions, and we also have the power to take it away. And that's why I am very focused now on thinking about accountability and what we as citizens can do. I am very invested over the next 4 weeks in thinking about everything I can do to try to persuade members of the Senate not to vote to confirm Todd Blanche as the next Attorney General. He has done tremendous damage to the justice system and to our country to date. We now know exactly how bad he is because he's had a year and change at the Justice Department as Deputy Attorney General, and we have to do what we can to try to defeat his confirmation as Attorney General. And I hope that some members of the Senate will step up and think bigger picture, longer term, about what would be the consequences for our country of confirming him into that position of the highest law enforcement officer in our country. I think that sometimes these steps feel like not enough. It can feel overwhelming to tackle this tremendous problem of corruption, as Eddie said, in our country. But we just have to take the steps that we can as individuals to push back and resist and reclaim our power as citizens.